Why did the Zen masters resort to koans? And even that they had to give up and ended up just slapping each other. Why would that be the mode of transmission that would be chosen? Impossible riddles that have no answer, and then slaps, shouts, kicks that have no real meaning. How can one get to enlightenment through such a method? But is there a method through which you can get to enlightenment? I've never yet found a Methodist who was enlightened. So there's a problem in trying to transmit this understanding to someone who is in ego consciousness. It is literally impossible. It cannot be done. Okay? The ego is designed in such a way that once you have acquired it and your consciousness has been inducted into it, there's no way back. And you are now a subject of language. And you are a subject that is inherently tied to the object of the body. And there is inherently, as the core of the ego structure, a sense of personal existence. All of that is illusory, but you can never convince an ego of that. That's its entire basis. And it cannot be rationally explained why it is illusory, at least not in such a way that an ego can get it and retain it. Because it is the nullification of the very frame of reference created by ego consciousness. So this needs to be clearly understood. And until you become utterly hopeless about reaching liberation, you will find that it is not possible. But the impossibility ends as soon as your hope to attain it ends. That's the key point, okay? This is why what the sages of many traditions, we're going to focus on the Bon and the Buddhist, that is an amalgam of the Kashmir Shaivite, the Buddhist, and the Bon as a single approach, an extraordinary approach that created an amazing body of literature, of very, very unique tantras that we're going to be going into. They are extraordinary because in a way they're verbal koans, the logic of which is so paradoxical and mind-boggling that if you follow it, you end up nullifying yourself in the actual attempt to make sense of it. What you do is realize that you make no sense as an entity, okay? That's what you have to understand, is that the one who's trying to understand is the problem and is what prevents understanding. So the Bon tradition uses the term natural state. It doesn't use enlightenment, liberation, and those things. It says simply, this is your natural state. Okay? Yes, it's your natural state before you had an ego. But it's not the ego's natural state. The ego has no natural state because it's a fabrication. It's based on concepts and memory traces and attitudes, orientations that are all framed within language and that have locked intentionalities within them that are presupposed by them, and a sense of an existence of a me that is the basis of all the intentions that are reflexive. They're not even necessarily mentalized or made as cognitive desires. But you can't stop something that isn't cognitive, right? Your control at a conscious level is only at the level of the cognitive. So if you work at that level, then what you have to say is the natural state is the state that is without desire and without fear, or without aversion is how they put it, but it comes to the same. Without desire, okay? But the problem for the ego is when it hears that, then it desires to be without desire. And it has immediately failed. You cannot desire to be in the natural state. That's an unnatural desire. You cannot desire anything and be in the natural state. And you cannot have an aversion for anything. So you can't hate your ego and wish you were in a different state than the ego, because that's the ego. Every ego hates its ego and wishes it was in a different state, and that keeps it in that state. Okay? You understand the situation that is your trap, or not your trap, your ego's trap. But in the natural state, prior to acquiring or being imprisoned in an ego, that natural state is still there. The ego did not take away your natural state. It took away only your awareness of the natural state and put it in superposition with the ego. But it's there. But it's there in a different dimension, a dimension that is free of language and concepts. So it cannot be reached by desire, which is based on an intention that is linguistic, and it cannot be based on any criteria of judgment that you could say, okay, this is the real self, this is the false. Even that attempt to make a distinction so you know what you're trying to reach it puts you back in the ego, because the real self makes no distinctions. It has no preferences. The real self neither accepts or rejects. And so if you're trying to get to somewhere, you're rejecting where you were, and in that state you have lost the possibility of getting to the natural state, which has no desire whatsoever, and no aversion and no intention. But it's what you are right now, you see? But you can't attain it. You are it. But your ego cannot know that you are it, ever. But you are it, and that can never be taken away from you. And there's nothing you need to do. Not only is there nothing you can do, but there's nothing you need to do. You're already it. But you're separated from it by the desire to know it, and even the desire to be it, because you are it. You can't desire to be it, because then you have taken yourself away. And there's no it. You see, that's the problem. The ego always wants an it, an object to acquire. That's the basis of the ego. Subject, object. I want that object. But enlightenment is not an object. It's not something you can even want. So you understand the impossibility of the situation, that the sages then are trying to help get beyond. How do you leapfrog this impossibility that is created by the very ego that is necessary to cognitively understand the necessity of realizing the true self in order to stop suffering? You need an ego for that. But once you have the ego, you can't attain what you need it for. Okay? So, once you understand that, then you're ready to read some of these tantras.